It's the Farmer to Farmer podcast, episode 126, and this is your host, Chris Blanchard. My guest today, Ray Tyler, raises about an acre of salad greens at Rose Creek Farms in Selmer, Tennessee, about 2 hours east of Memphis and 3 hours west of Nashville. He farms with his wife, Ashley, and his 5 children, as well as employees. Produce is sold at farmers market through a CSA and to grocery stores in Memphis. Ray tells the story of his farm from its start as a mixed vegetable and livestock operation in 2010 to its current focus on specialty salad greens, baby root vegetables, and tomatoes on a small scale. We discuss the never-ending vicious cycle of failures that Ray encountered in the beginning years of the farm and how the life-threatening illness of a young child resulted in Rose Creek Farms' transition from a failing operation into a thriving, joyful vegetable production machine. Ray also provides insights into the challenges and opportunities of farming in the South, including a fantastic tutorial on summer lettuce production in that challenging climate. We also dig into how Ray leveraged an intensive education to make his farming transition and the large and small practical changes that make it possible for Rose Creek Farms to gross big dollars on a small acreage. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is generously supported by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are versatile, maneuverable in tight spaces, lightweight for less compaction, and easy to maintain and repair on the farm. Gear-driven and built to last for decades of dependable service. BCSAmerica.com. And by Farmers Web, software for your farm. Farmers Web makes it easier to work with your buyers, saving time, reducing errors, and increasing your capacity to work with more buyers overall. FarmersWeb.com. And by Vermont Compost Company, founded by organic crop growing professionals committed to meeting the need for high quality compost and compost-based living soil mixes for certified organic plant production. VermontCompost.com. And hey, before we get started today, I want to say a word about Nigel Walker, who was the founder of Eat Well Farm in Dixon, California. Nigel died on Saturday after a long time living with cancer. I can't say that I knew Nigel well, but his interview on the podcast remains one of my favorites. He was a creative, cheerful, and innovative man, and the world is a lesser place without him, and better for having had him in it. Ray Tyler, welcome to the Farmer to Farmer podcast.
Chris, it is an honor to be here.
I'm so glad that you could join me today. It's, you and I have been talking for quite some time. And since the first time we've been in touch, I've been like, wow, this, Ray's up to a lot of really interesting things out there in Selmer, Tennessee. So can you kind of give us the lay of the land and, where you're located and what you're doing out there?
Yeah. So we're out here we're about 2 hours, 2 hours east of Memphis and about 3 hours west of Nashville. So we're kind of like in the middle of nowhere. And when I go to the farmers market up north in Jackson, I tell folks that we're from, Selmer, McNairy County, they always go, I didn't know anything could grow in Selmer, Tennessee. So we are kind of in this region where there's just not a lot of, there's really no produce farmers that we know of who are doing anything on any kind of serious scale, just mainly row crops and, cattle farmers. And so we've got about a 1 acre market garden here. And we sell a lot of salad greens. We do just all the whole range between the baby mustards, the arugula, all that stuff, baby root veg, and of course tomatoes in the spring and summer. And we're taking that to 2 different markets, a lot of restaurants in Memphis and some other different wholesale outlets. We're also getting to a lot of grocery stores, which we're really loving. And I've got my wife is with me, so she is what we have recently come to the reality that she's actually a full-time farmer and a full-time stay-at-home mom. We're still trying to figure out how those two work at the same time, but she's amazing. We also have 5 young children who are with us as well. We homeschool them, and so we're just out here trying to beat this Mid-South humidity and oppressive heat, and we're having a great time doing it.
Now, when you talk about an acre of salad greens, that's not what you were doing several years ago.
No, but no. So when we first started, we were actually mainly in the meat business. So we were 75% of our business was pork, poultry, eggs, turkeys, and that was our main, really bread and butter. And I would say we had around 2 acres of produce that we were basically playing and failing doing with a tractor. And I think we kind of, when you first start farming, with not a lot of good examples in the area, we were just really just taking a lot of stabs at just a lot of different things, trying to figure out what we enjoy doing, what will sell. I think that's important is we've definitely have realized over the years that we can't be too romantic about certain crops or certain products that, if they're losing money to get rid of them. But, we were just basically trying a bunch of different produce, a bunch of different animal kind of businesses to see what kind of stuck. So we ended up having a pretty successful animal business. We weren't making very much money at it, but we kind of had some systems down, and we've finally had this turnover of product that was pretty consistent. We were still definitely struggling a lot on the produce end, mainly because I was a terrible tractor operator, and I think I was farming with all the wrong tractors and equipment, and also I think trying to do the meat and produce, trying to do those two at the same time was a huge challenge for us. So that's kind of what we started out doing before we kind of made some changes to our system. We enjoyed the animals. We really loved seeing the pastures get greener over the years. We loved that whole process. We really we saw there was a need in West Tennessee for the free range pastured animals, and so that definitely kind of drove us to do that more. But I think there's definitely this point of scale to really make the animal business really, really work, to where it's really generating plenty of income, and you don't feel like you're just always investing in more infrastructure and trying to find more land, more pasture. We didn't have a lot of pasture to work with, and so we were definitely fairly limited. So there was definitely some challenges that we were facing with the whole animal meat business. And at the same time trying to figure out how to grow produce and what grows in our climate and what sells and all those different things. So yeah, that's kind of a general idea, kind of how we got started and what we were doing.
How long ago was it that you guys got started farming?
We started in 2010, so that was about 7 years ago. Our second daughter was born. I don't know. Have you ever heard of? Do you know Paul and Allison Whitaker, or know of their name? So it's kind of interesting stream of events. We had found out this guy in North Mississippi who he was growing some sort of vegetables. And so we went down there and visited him, and he had spoke about this guy in Kentucky who was growing just amazing produce year round. And so he gave us his book, which they wrote, called Walking into Spring, just a fantastic book for, growers in our region. So we went there and visited him, and it was in November, I believe. And we went in there, and he had these heads of lettuce like nothing I've ever seen before. And just how it was November, we had already been through, several frost. And I just, when I saw, I think it was like a skyfish lettuce or some just really exotic bib that you'll never see in the grocery store. And I was like, I want to grow that. Like that, this is what I want to do. And It was just, him and Allison at the time, and I think Allison was working full-time teaching, so it was really just him. So, they weren't really on any kind of big scale, but just the quality of his produce was just really fantastic. And then we had invited him to come down to our farm and essentially just get it started because, this was back in the time where, I had Eli Coleman's books, which were really fantastic, but I really needed some good, just practical direction for the southern climate. And, we, at that point, I had a wife, I had two young children, and I guess being young, I didn't want to wait 20 years for me to figure this out. Like, I was ready to figure it out, like, now. So,
like yesterday.
Like, let's get the show on the road. So we invited him to come down. And him and Allison came down for about 2 days, and they kind of got us started in kind of how to set up. We actually had one high tunnel set up, and he helped us lay the whole thing out. I mean, just the seeds to buy, how to lay out the whole tunnel, from the varieties to the timing, just everything. And that's about as far as we got, but that was about as much as my brain could handle, in one weekend. And then he also kind of got us set up on the pastured poultry, because he was like, hey, this is something that, you guys may want to think about. It's fairly easy to get going. It doesn't require a lot of, infrastructure and cost. In 8 weeks from the time of chicks, you can actually have cash flow. And so we were like, let's give that a shot. So we did everything Paul had told us to do. We got all of our lettuces done, our tomatoes and kale in the high tunnel when we did. And we had this high tunnel in the spring of 2010 that was just completely loaded with produce. And a friend of mine had come by, and he was like, Ray, this is nice, but where are you going to sell this? I said, well, I haven't got that far. I'm just too busy growing this stuff. And, his whole point was it's easy to grow, but it's a lot harder to sell. So we had called on to some farmers markets, just trying to figure out if there was room. And during this time, I'm actually, I've got basically a part to full-time job, doing some land maintenance. So this was kind of, on the side. And so we had one market that was, seemed pretty excited for us to come and just show up. And so we brought these heads of lettuce there. And those folks were so excited about seeing lettuce that they were like, as we were grabbing the boxes of lettuce from the truck, they were taken out of our hands. They said they had never seen lettuce like that in like 30 years. And we just clean house that. It was our first day at that market, and so we were obviously very excited. And we went, there may be something here. We knew that in order that we had a lot to learn as far as, succession plantings. And this was March and April, which is the easiest part of the year to grow, at least here in the South. And, we knew the worst was yet to come. And so we did that March and April. And then, since we weren't really on top of our game on the succession plantings and the spacing to really plant, come, I think, May and June, we were basically out of product. And it was, and we had some stuff, but we had really still had no idea what we were doing. Looking back, I wish I would have gone, to a farm for at least one whole season just to see. There's a lot of things as a beginning farmer you just don't even think about, of hey, make sure you have your irrigation before June. Like, it all needs to be set up. There's just make sure that you're switching your to your summer varieties. In the end of April. So there's just a lot of these things that we just had to learn basically the hard way. After that experience with, Paul just really helping set our spring basically market up, I realized the value of pursuing high grade education and, really finding folks who knew what they were talking about and really trying to go and basically just asking for more help. And, I wanted to be kind of like, the guy who could just basically recreate the wheel for our area. But I just quickly realized that I did not want to wait that long. And so that whole time was just, it was such an exciting time because, in 2009 when we were just dreaming about farming, my wife and I were just like, is it even possible for us to even make a living growing food and selling it and actually being on the land? Our children, I wanted to be around for my children. Previously, I was driving 4 hours a day to Memphis and back, and I wanted to be done with that life. After us talking in 2009 about this dream, and then, in March of 2010, just seeing like, wow, we got a high tunnel full of product. Customers are buying it. We were just thrilled. We were really thrilled. And so from that point on, it was just really just a lot of terrible mistakes, a lot of disappointments from, I think the 2010 was a massive heat wave. Happened to be the year that we started. Paul Whitaker actually told us later on that year, he goes, man, that was the worst year I've ever had farming. And of course, that was the first year we started. So we definitely got a great introduction to the realities and the not so fun things about farming here in the South.
Little trial by fire.
Oh my goodness, yeah, almost literally. The ground it was just baking. So, but at the end of the year, we had, we had gotten with Paul again. I actually went up to his farm this time and basically had helped him pull up a bunch of tomatoes in trade for about 2 or 3 hours of just him sitting down with me. And I kind of had made some plans based off of some previous failures, and just, we kind of had planned the fall. And so we actually had a decent fall harvest, which was really encouraging. So at the end of that first year, I think we only made like $10,000 of that first year. Now, mind you, I wasn't depending on that income, so it was basically, in our spare time, early mornings, afternoons, and Saturdays. But it was enough where we felt like, I think with let's when we took the winter, we did some planning, and I think we visited some more farms. I went to the Southern Sog Farming Conference down here, and so just meeting some other farmers, we got encouraged, and we were like, let's just try this again. So during that time, the church that I'm involved with, we had this young man who had gotten out of prison. And he'd been in prison for a while, so he needed help transitioning from, prison life to the real world. And it was definitely not going well for him. So they kind of asked if we would essentially take him on, hoping that him being connected to the land, at that point, we had a few pigs that we gotten by accident that someone convinced me to get. One of the worst things that ever happened to us. No, but we had said, yep, it'd be great to have a guy to help anyways, just to do basic chores. And, and I've known this young man for a while, since he was a child. So I kind of wanted to, if we can be a part of his, turning point in life, then, we're all for it. So he really loved animals a lot. And we had gotten a few pigs by mere accident. We had this one patch of ground, which I kind of failed to mention earlier, that was completely infested with Johnson grass and pigweed. And I don't know if you have those weeds up north, but down here, it'll just devastate you. And it's to the point where you just cannot get rid of it. It's these tubers that grow underground. And, when you dig one up, they just reproduce 10 more tubers. It's just a nightmare. So we get all the leaves from the city of Selmer, and they actually dump them on our farm. And they were dumping them in the landfill. They were paying the landfill, $15 per load. And we were like, you can dump them on our farm for free. And right. So they started doing that. And then a friend of mine had this idea because why don't we, put some leaves on this field and why don't we get you some pigs? I'm like, no, I don't want any pigs. No pigs. They stink. I don't have the money to feed them for 6 months, and then where are we gonna sell them? So he talked me, and so we ended up getting 2 pigs, and they did. I think we had portioned off like this one eighth of an acre section, and we put some leaves down, and we put them down over the winter, and over the course of the winter, they got every Johnson grass tuber out of that one area. And we have yet since that time to have any Johnson grass come back. And we were like, wow, this is incredible. Like there's actually maybe some hope. That was the other thing that I was unprepared for during our first year of farming was the weeds, like the incredible amount. I wish we could find a way to market all these weeds and sell them, because it would really change the life of us farmers. But having those pigs that winter really was like, wow, what if we did this to all of our fields? We could like literally get rid of Johnson grass. So, and then, our friend who was with us for that winter, he just loved them. He's like, hey man, I love these pigs. Can we get more? And he was like a pig whisperer. I mean, he just loved pigs. They loved him. They'd follow him around everywhere. They wouldn't come to me with a bucket hardly. He definitely had a gift for animals, and seeing kind of how the animals changed him. We got more animals. We got more pigs. And then he's like, hey, what about some cows? So we got some cows, and then we got some chickens. And the next thing you know, we got all these animals, and then we're like, what are we going to do with all these animals? So we kind of started getting the word out, and then got to find out that there's actually a pretty big demand for pastured animals. And, our friend here is doing a great job. He's actually mellowing out as a person. And just the land is benefiting. Just everybody's benefiting. So we end up just kind of, since we kind of had the demand and I had the space for the animals, and we also had some adjoining pastures, we just ended up getting more and more animals. And we found that we could be a lot more consistent with our meat sales than we could with our produce sales. It's whenever you harvest a head of lettuce, like you've got, 3 days at max to sell it, where, when you have a pork in the freezer, it can be there for 5 months. And so all those combined, that's kind of how we got really carried away into the whole meat business. And in the meantime, we started a vegetable CSA, and I personally have always loved growing vegetables more than I did the actual animals. And so we had access to a tractor. And then I got some just really basic cultivating equipment. We got a plastic mulch layer, which really helped with our weeds. And so we just started growing more and more produce outside. We just started doing a lot more, tomatoes, a lot more lettuce, really big fall crops, really big spring crops, some a little overwinter stuff. And it just kind of grew and grew. Our biggest problem with those two things is I could not. I felt like I really had nothing under control. Like I really never had the animals under control to a point where I felt really good about, their health, the land's health, not being stressed about, how are we going to pay for feed, or how are we going to pay this $1,000 processing bill. And then at the same time, like when I needed to be planting, because it's a beautiful day to plant or work in the fields, I was processing chicken. So I just really struggled at personally, and it's just probably because of I'm just, wasn't wired to do both. And so we found to keep up with for our produce production, which is kind of, just backwards now. Looking back at it, it's definitely a foolish way to think. But I just felt like I had to have so much land in cultivation because I was having so much crop loss, failures, that I had to grow twice as much just to make up for all the losses. So then it's just like this never-ending vicious cycle of failures, just week after week and year after year of going, what am I doing here? And so it just got to the point where it was just insanity. It was just insanity. And I think a person can do. I think a farmer can be really good if all they do is just meat, animals, and maybe have a small vegetable garden for their family, or a farmer could have just produce and maybe a small, flock of chickens for their personal use. But to do both on a scale that is financially successful and that you have some kind of quality of life, I failed miserably at it. We just could not do it. So that was our experience. And we have yet to actually meet someone who can do both. I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't met them yet. Who actually do both on some kind of substantial scale, who have a good quality of life and who are making decent money. There's no one in our area.
Well, and I think it's a real challenge unless you get to a scale where you can begin to delegate some of those responsibilities.
That's right. And you can delegate. There's this hard place of, to get good labor, you have to pay for it. You have to first find the guy, and you have to have the money to kind of take that risk of, we just never got there, we just never got there. So, well,
and part of that, you have to have that right combination of markets, land to be able to scale up.
Yes.
And the capital, so that you really can, like you say, you can bring in somebody good, you can afford to bring in somebody good, and you can set it to them with enough attention that they can do a good job.
That's
it's one,
right.
One of the mistakes I oftentimes see with people when they bring in somebody to quote unquote manage a certain part of the operation is they think, well, okay, great. So this person's going to be like me, right? They're going to just manage it in their spare time. Like I've been managing the greenhouse in my spare time. But now they're also supposed to be part of the harvest crew and part of the packing crew, instead of saying like, okay, I'm going to bring this person in and I'm going to dedicate their time to doing a really good job at this one thing.
Right.
And I think that requires a different scale.
Absolutely. Yes, you are so right. And we found out too that we actually kind of hit this ceiling of how much meat we could actually sell at a price that made financial sense. And then it's like this point of, do we go to Nashville? Do we, then it just got so complicated, and so during all that time around the winter of 2015, we had really kind of sat down and we really made this, this is like the first year that I was full-time, by then. And we were very grateful to be farming full time, not making a very good living, but we were at least, we were doing what we were, what our dream was. So we had made this really incredible plan for the animals, for the produce. We were going to scale up our produce CSA. We were, this was going to kind of be the year that we're going to really hopefully be able to afford to take someone on. And really, we've gotten, our processing facility built finally for our chickens, and we got the equipment we needed. We still needed a few things for that, but it was definitely going smooth. We had a huge demand for our CSA, and so we were going to really scale that up. So we just really mapped out our plan. So we, I think it was March. So in March of 2015, we had just our greenhouse was just loaded with plants. We're getting ready to get our fields ready. We're fixing to order our first batch of chicks, and I was working out in the field by the high tunnel. And our daughter had some issues with one of her teeth, and got some of her teeth pulled out, but it never healed, and it was just getting worse and worse. And so she took her to the doctor. And she came home one day, and mind you, this is early March. Greenhouse is loaded. we're fixing to get into the fields. We're really excited about the season. And she said, "Are you ready? Are you ready for your life to completely change?" I said, "Come on, we're farmers. Like, bring it on, right?" And she said, "Our daughter has cancer." And I was like, "What?" Because yeah, she has squamous cell carcinoma. And we were just in, she was 6 years old at the time, and we've, since she was one, we really tried to eat well. So it was a huge blow to our family for sure. And, without question, the first thing we're going to do is take care of our daughter. And so that began this serious, at least for me personally, and really taking a hard look at what I'm doing in my life, because now we're faced with this reality of like, this is stage 4. It was basically in the bone, just millimeters away from the main vein that was going to go to her brain, and basically any day that once it got to that main vein, sensory vein, then it was basically nothing you could do at that point. And I just had a friend who's my age who died like 6 months earlier from the same cancer. So it was definitely not something a parent wants to hear. But we just went, okay, we can either we can either be in the pits about this or just find out. It was really interesting, Chris, about a week or two after, just like, what are we going to do with the farm? How are we going to make a living? Like, I don't have a savings account. Like, my savings account is, in the greenhouse. Like, every dime is in there. We had already sold a lot of CSAs, and their money is like in the fertilizer and plastic and plants and potting soil and propane and, everything that a farm needs in spring. Like, that's where you need all your money. So that was already spent. So we had, probably 50 CSA members, I would say, at that point, and we were hoping for even more. And so, as a provider, I'm like, okay, just think, okay, how is this gonna, like, this is, it wasn't looking good on every aspect of, is the farm over for good? Do I have to go get a job? Is my daughter going to live? I mean, that was obviously our first concern, was, is she going to survive another week? And being there for my wife, we had, we had a 4-month-old baby at that time that was nursing. So that was, I mean, it was crazy. But I remember thinking, it took me a few weeks to get to this place of, we just in and out of the doctors, just trying to figure out what we're going to do. I'm calling every, holistic cancer center in the country, that I can know of what to do with this cancer. And they're all like, do not mess around with this cancer. It's just nasty. So I just remember coming to this place of, I actually feel like, as bad as this whole situation is, and there's nothing good about it whatsoever, that I really felt like something good was going to come. I really did. And I just had that belief and hope that, God was really in control. He gives and he takes away. And we're going to find and look for the best possible outcomes of this situation. And I think when I got to that point, I wasn't okay. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It was not an easy time, but I had a lot more hope and belief that everything was gonna work out, no matter this, like, what the outcome was gonna be. We were gonna all be better because of it. Basically, we were sent to St. Jude, which is a major international children's cancer hospital. and just so happened we were 2 hours away. So that was a huge blessing. So we basically opted for surgery, which was their recommendation. And what they were going to do is basically her whole lower jawbone had to be completely removed. The whole thing, because of the cancer had spread so fast. And even like in the 2 weeks that we had waited between all the doctor visits, so when we first got the diagnosis to the time that we actually went in for surgery, it had just spread so fast. It was just, I mean, it was a miracle that we took her in at the time we did. And you know, they took basically her whole half of her jaw out and took a piece of her lower leg bone. I think it's called the fibula. It was about a 6-inch piece, and they grafted it in there. I don't know how they do what they do, but it was a 14-hour surgery. And it was definitely one of the longest days of our life. And, you know, because there was no promise of really any outcome. It was just,
Right.
what they told us, she was the youngest person on record to have squamous cell carcinoma. And just squamous cell carcinoma, so everyone knows, it's a really common gum and jaw disease that older men get from drinking you know, lots of liquor and smoking tobacco their whole life. So that's
Right.
it's very common in older men, but they said it was the youngest patient they ever saw. So it was actual a reportable case. So we were in the hospital for 2 weeks. And, you know, we were in ICU for several days. And, you know, during that time, I just really had a lot of time to just think and just reflect on, okay, you know, we have, you know, 4 children now. You know, our life is now over. My wife is fixing to become full-time nurse. Here I was. I've spent the better part of the previous 4 years being so consumed with the farm, day and night. And I went, you know, in the end of a day, you know, most men, you know, when we're on our deathbed, we don't need a successful farm. We don't need lots of land. We don't need a big house, shiny cars. What we desire is our families to be with us. And it was a real big wake-up call for me of making sure that I'm not just around, but I'm really have the energy and time to be with my family.
To be present.
You know, you're so right. Just because you're in the house on the computer emailing doesn't mean you're not being with your family. You know, so now, you know, so since that time, it just really like, you know, it's like everything came in perspective, like what is really important. And yes, we love farming and it's our living and we love it. And we want to provide good food to the community. But if I'm not around for my family, I've gained absolutely nothing. And so it just hit home really, really hard. And so I knew when we left that hospital that we were going to make some changes. And, you know, and so, and yeah, and it was an amazing, it was, you know, Chris, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to us. We completely changed our health. We did just a really pretty radical you know, food turnover. You know, we ended up getting like an infrared sauna. We got a really good juicer, so we're doing a lot of juicing. The whole family changed our diet. So instead of, you know, telling our daughter, hey, you know, Asha, you know, you can't have this food, like the whole family did it together. And it really brought us close. And my wife and I were, you know, we're not old, but we're not 18 anymore. And so we were starting to have some health issues. And just within a matter of months, I mean, our health just completely turned around. all of a sudden I can actually get up early in the morning. I have energy. So there's the health aspects that came with that. And to just say something real quick about the whole CSA, kind of movement and that family. When we were in the hospital, I think we went in the hospital for the surgery like the week or so when our CSA was supposed to start. So we told them, because we didn't know how long we were going to be in there. So we told them that, guys, we're going to have to cancel our CSA this spring, and we're really sorry. We unfortunately do not have the cash to give your money back, but we will give you a gift card, or we'll give you a summer CSA if we do one. But for now, we'll just give you at least a gift card that's, equal to that amount. 90% of the people said, "Do not worry about it. Like, we don't want money back. We don't want no gift card." It was incredible, the support that we got. We ended up kind of doing a fundraiser just basically to help kind of raise some funds for just her actual medical needs and some things that we needed to get for her. And just the amazing response that we got from our, when and even just, national, farming friends that we've made. So there's something to say with the farming community, when a need arises, it's pretty incredible. And we just felt very blessed to experience that. Lots of time you're on the other, either giving end, and to be on the receiving end is never fun. But I was very humbled and was very grateful to be a part of such a great community and family. So when we came home from that whole thing, we were just like, okay, what are we going to do? First thing is, Ashley, you're no longer on the farm. There's a lot of needs that, our daughter still had for those next few months. It was a pretty traumatic surgery for her and for us. And so through that summer, we didn't do a CSA. We just did farmers markets, and we just basically, and my wife and I, we talked about, should I go get a job or should we keep farming? And we both decided that I think if we were to make some radical changes, that in the end, we love the farming lifestyle. We need to not do what we've been doing for the past 4 years. So yeah, just some major changes had to happen. So around that time, I found your podcast, and I heard, Jean Martin on there, no tractors, doing really well on an acre and a half. And I don't know how many times I listened to that podcast, but we ended up getting the book. And I listened to more of your podcast. I found some the podcast on Curtis Stone, and I just remember being out there like in June, July, by myself, waiting for the rain to stop to get out in the field with the tractors, just going, you know what, I was really honest with myself and went, I am not cut out for this tractor work. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not mechanically inclined. I don't, I'm really having a hard time getting all my space. I just wasn't having fun at all. And then during that time, one of the things that we cut out of our diet was pork. Okay, because porks don't sweat, and so they, sweating, and it's one of the healthiest things we can do to eliminate toxins. So we got in this really kind of strict protocol, so we're no longer eating pork. And so here I am raising these 50 hogs that are getting out, that are, they're stinking, and I can't get them to the processing facility, and, my freezers are breaking, and we can't eat the meat. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this is not fun either. And I had found that, kind of podcast on Curtis Stone, and really just started doing a lot of research on, like, you know what? Maybe you don't have to use a tractor after all. A lot of the folks in the Mid-South say it's impossible to farm in the Mid-South without a tractor, so that's kind of what I was led to believe. And here I am hearing other growers. Now, mind you, they're in Canada, but I just went, this may be possible. And so I think it was like June or July. I'm out there. It's blasting hot. And I just remember going, I would love to not have to deal with tractors anymore. Is there a way? So I had reached out. I thought, you know what? I would love to get JM down here to the farm and just, half a day of, I've and I did read the book, and that was very good. But there were just some things like, JM, have you ever seen these weeds in the South? Like, the weed never dies. The bugs never die. It is just brutal down here. And so I really had some serious doubts about it really working in the South. And then I started, kind of corresponding back and forth with him about the possibility of him coming down in the fall. And he seemed very open to it. And so I was kind of telling some of my other farmer friends here in the Mid-South, I'm like, dude, the only way you can make money, on that kind of money on 1 acre is maybe weed. And I don't know if you know, but it's not legal in Tennessee yet. So there was just a lot of kickback on there's impossible, there's no way. Those guys up north are just full of baloney. And I went, well, why don't we get him down here? So we ended up hiring James to come down to do a two-day workshop. And a lot of it, what kind of stemmed this direction was I felt like these guys who were farming on just 1 acre or less had a lot more time to do other things than just farm. And that was the very thing that I was really looking for. Like I was looking for a major change in our family. And so I had this hope that, this may be possible, but I'm like, I'm not ready to get rid of the meat. Like I put too much money into it, too much time. It just ain't happening. And we end up getting Jam to come down, and we end up selling tickets to help kind of cover the cost. And we also, a lot of the farmers in our area, we've lost a lot of family farms. It's really hard climate to grow in. It's the customers are 20 years behind, say California and New England, and there's a lot of things going against. So we were really saddened by that, and like, well, why don't we bring in some kind of outside perspective on maybe we can all change our growing, systems and maybe become better farmers and have just better lives. So we end up opening tickets so that they would come, but we end up having more of a national people coming from all over the country instead. And so it's very interesting how that all kind of works. After that time, seeing him on the farm and was really, really helpful. And then I also was kind of talking back and forth to Curtis Stone, and finally started doing some consulting with him. And then during that time, we realized, well, like Curtis had asked us, hey, is it possible that you guys are doing too much? And Ashley's over there like nodding her head, yes, we are. And I'm like, I don't know. I think we can handle it. But, after that phone call, we both just went, what if we just did produce? That's all we eat anyways. We hardly eat any meat anymore. We love growing greens. We can never grow enough greens, so the market is there. We're not having fun doing meat. We just need to sell it. And just so happened that Caleb Kernlin, who was one of Joel Salatin's managers for 2 years, he was moving back home to Jackson, about an hour away north, and we had befriended him. Few years passed, and so we called him and said, hey, we have a market, we have the animals, we have infrastructure, do you want the business? And he said yes. So we just handed the whole thing to him, and when we did that, Chris, I had this weight off of me that I just cannot explain. It felt so good to let something go.
I remember the day that the sheep left my farm, and it was
right.
It was sad, but it was also just a tremendous feeling of relief, like that I just wasn't going to have to deal with that tomorrow.
It was amazing. The fact that I don't have to, keep the pigs' water from freezing in the winter anymore. It was incredible. So last year, 2016 was our first year of just doing produce, and it was a risk. So we basically sold 75% of our income, gone.
75% of your gross income,
of
right?
Our gross, not net. Gross.
And I think and so what, right? And so what?
Exactly. So, man, we made some hard things of going, okay, we're going to, this year, we're gonna get rid of half of the crops we grow. We're gonna only grow on 1 acre. We're getting rid of the tractor, and we're gonna set time. We're going to go, we are done, at 4 o'clock, we're done, no matter what. Unless, obviously, we're packing orders and we have, a few more heads to package, which only happened twice last year. But in general, we're going to set really strict perimeters on our work week. And it changed our life. We actually, in August of last year, we actually took a week off for vacation. We went up north and cooled off in Minnesota. And we actually had money to do it. We didn't have to worry about, what if the pigs get overheated? What if our help doesn't water the chickens? It was incredible. And we had such a fun time last year. Made the most money we ever made in our life. And my wife really enjoyed just doing the vegetables. Our kids enjoyed it. It's a lot safer than, being around tractors, and you're always, wondering, okay, is my 2-year-old, going to be underneath my wheel? So many things changed last year that just made it very, very enjoyable. And our lives just, they'll never be the same. So
Awesome.
That's kind of a long story of to go, it was definitely a tragedy, that happened, but we really, I think human nature, it's very easy to get caught up in the, what was me and why did this happen to me? And, and just start going downhill. And it's tough to get out of that place. But when we did, and we went, okay, what, we knew that something was going to change, and we were looking for it. And it, once we saw the changes and we embraced the change, it was just, we'll never go back. We don't even own a cat, just no animals. I mean, we're just go hardcore. I'm sure as our kids get older, they're going to want some more animals. But so we had a good time last year. We're having a great time this year, and that's kind of our short story of how we got from failing as farmers to actually loving life.
So Ray, right now, I think is a good time for us to take a break, get a couple words from our sponsors. When we come back, I really want to talk to you about kind of the nuts and bolts about how you made this work. I mean, this is a big journey and a lot of changes. And I really want to dig into some of the details about how you actually transformed your farm and your life at the right down at the runway level.
Sounds great.
Perennial support for the Farmer to Farmer podcast is provided by Vermont Compost Company. Hey, Ray, I noticed on Instagram that you use Vermont Compost Company's potting soil. Is there something about their product that works especially well for you and that makes you want to use it in your lettuce production?
I love Vermont Compost and all their products. We went from 1 year to having the hardest time getting our lettuce transplants coming out of our plugs. The moment we switched, every plug popped out with ease and completely changed our lettuce production system. So we love Vermont Compost and would really highly recommend every farmer to consider trying it out.
That's awesome. And I couldn't say it better myself. Vermont Compost Company, taking care of growers by taking care of transplants since 1992. VermontCompost.com. And by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are real farming equipment for real farmers. And with PTO-driven attachments like rototillers, flail mowers, rotary plows, power harrows, log splitters, snow throwers, even a utility trailer and a new water transfer pump, you've got the tools that you need to get the jobs done across the farm and across the homestead. On my own farm, we went through a number of so-called solutions for mowing and tilling before we finally got smart and bought a BCS. Even though we owned a four-wheel tractor to manage our 20 acres of vegetables, the BCS tackled jobs that we couldn't do with the larger machine, from mowing steep slopes and around trees to working in our high tunnels. Plus, they're gear-driven for years of dependable service. Check out bcsamerica.com to see the full lineup of tractors and attachments, plus videos of BCS in action. All right, and we're back with Ray Tyler from Rose Creek Farms in Selmer, Tennessee. During the first part of the show, you really described this kind of incredible journey of going from, not farming to then farming and going kind of crazy with it.
Yes.
And then really, prompted by this health crisis with your daughter, turning things around and getting control of your farm, and I always love to talk about management, and that things that aren't managed tends towards chaos. And I don't care whether it's your teenager's bedroom or
Right.
your farm or your bank account. You've
Right.
got to manage.
Absolutely.
And otherwise things, entropy, right?
That's right.
So what I want to dig into here in the second half of the show is how did you guys go about actually making these changes? Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, we're not going to work after 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we're going to, get rid of all the tractors. But how? How does that actually work to go from being a crazy farmer in 2015 to running a BCS instead of tractors and quitting work at 4?
Right.
So
right.
I'm going to start with, I guess the specific question I want to start with is, just talk to me about going the production methods. So you went from doing things with the tractor on a couple of acres, having cultivating tractors, and then you did what? What kind of equipment did you switch to, and how did you make that change?
So what we ended up doing is to kind of go back a little bit. So we spent about 10 hours with Curtis Stone around there somewhere. And it was, because I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of, I'm very skeptical. So if you're going to say something like, I want to see it work, I want to hear it really explained, and I want to challenge it. I want to challenge what you're saying in my context, because everybody has different context of the farms. And, we've never seen, at least in our area, this kind of farming, and all my farmer friends are telling me this is impossible. So I have a lot of doubts. So we did spend about 10 hours with Curtis, just really talking about the nuts and bolts of, what we're doing, and then also going, okay, so, you're in our context, I kind of have really heavy soil, so I wanted to go the BCS route. I actually had a BCS that I just never used, and so I like the BCS. We have our beds do not drain very well, so I wanted to have the actual raised beds to get my crops out of the water. So we just talked a lot about that. We also talked about like our sales, and so we talked about what I thought was possible as far as numbers, and so we just kind of worked that way. So what we did is we got, so I already had a BCS tractor, so I bought the whole kit, the whole BCS, flail mower, the Berta plow, which we don't really use anymore, the power harrow, which is an incredibly fast, efficient tool. And so we ended up buying that through, I think BCS has some kind of credit program that you can do with them. So we're able to finance that. And, and we also, one of the other practical things too, is I was really getting tired of laying plastic with the tractor. It's just, the plastic gets stuck in the soil and you leave plastic behind. And again, since I was a terrible tractor farmer, I could never get it all up. And so, we talked about the landscape fabric, which I'm a big user of landscape fabric. Probably won't always be, but what had happened with the weeds this was actually I think weeds are the number one cause for farms to fail. That and not having the right sales. Down here, it's so hard to control. And then the last 4 years of farming, I just could not tell you how many flushes of pigweed I went to seed. And literally, I had the weed, it was just doomsday out here. It was hopeless cause of even getting a start. So we invested.
Well, and I want to lay in on that a little bit, just on the weeds, because this is actually one of my pet peeves on farms is I don't think that a lot of people understand, especially beginning farmers, just how devastating the weeds are.
Oh, it'll kill you.
Right, because not only is it going to reduce your airflow, which increases your crop disease, and it's robbing your nutrients, and it's robbing the water that's in the soil, but it just makes everything hard. Harvest just gets hard.
Like everything. Walking,
everything.
we used to, when we did tomatoes, when we would harvest tomatoes, the weeds in the paths were 2 feet tall. And you're out there in the morning, your legs are soaked. Listen, having, if you want to enjoy life on a farm, get rid of all your weeds, and whatever that takes, you can't have any. So this was one thing that we really hit on with Curtis, was the whole weed pressure. So where we came to was, for the first couple years, while we get a handle on everything else, and I don't like pulling weeds, is that we did, if it was a transplanted crop, we were doing landscape fabric, paths, everything. And I think we spent 20 hours last year weeding.
Really?
And listen, I don't know how many hours we weeded the year before and how many crops we lost to the weeds. I just cannot tell you the night and day difference. I think we will get our seed bank under control in the next year or two, maybe less. We're already seeing a dramatic difference just by not letting last year's seed go, weeds go to seed. Tremendous difference. So by doing landscape fabric, we did a lot of, bed prep, tarping, and then, getting the tarp off. We'd let the seeds come up even more and then flame weed that. Just really being aggressive about that. And the landscape fabric is what changed the game for us. Mind you, it is a hassle to play down and to take up, but in between, there's just no weeds. And there will be a few weeds that will go up around your plant, but it's nothing compared to kind of be out there with a hoe at 4:00 in the afternoon when you get all your work done, when it's, almost 100 degrees and 85% humidity in August. That is not fun. So for us, putting on landscape fabric was very enjoyable compared to what we were doing in the years past. So that was a big nut and bolt difference in what, we had tremendous yield. Matter of fact, I couldn't even sell all the crop that I grew, which was a kind of another problem. It was unbelievable.
So you guys cut the amount of vegetables that you were growing, or the acres that you were growing on, in half. And you still had, and you had more vegetables than you could sell.
Listen.
Year before.
2015, on 2 acres with the tractor, we grossed, just on the produce alone, around $40,000. Last year, by getting the weeds under control and having more product, because, it didn't go to weeds, and we were just more, we were in control of the situation. So I think we grossed $120,000 last year on half the amount of land.
Sorry, that's where the transcript's going to read stunned silence.
Right. We were stunned. And we're no longer working 12, 16 hours a day. We left the farm for a week in August. It was a life-changing year for us. Mind you, there's still lots of problems, mainly on, overproducing. And so what are we going to do with all this product? And so some of the problems we had is, they bought kale in 2015, but why isn't anyone buying it in 2016? So, some of those things are it's just part of the business.
Part of any business.
Yeah, really. If you're not always, if a farmer isn't looking for his next sale, it's just a matter of time before he's going to go out of business. You got to be on top of it. So the weeds was number one, getting that under control. And also another thing that really helped our cash flow was, in our area, it's very saturated with peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, okra, squash, zucchini. And there's no way that we could really compete on 1 acre with all those guys who have, there's farmers here who have 25 acres of this stuff. So we decided to do the one thing that no one wanted to do in the summer, and that was lettuce. We have a really good market for lettuce because no one grows it in the summer. And so we really put a lot of time and effort and thought in how can we, pick the varieties for lettuces, the spacing, the water, the shade, how can we keep this stuff cranking all through July and August? And so that really helped because we had really solid cash flow through those months, which, July, August, and September are one of the lean months down here in the South because the only stuff that can really grow well is a lot of your just common, very cheap to grow vegetables. So by entering into the salad business, doing the one thing that no farmer in our area is willing to do or try, we made it happen.
So how are you growing lettuce in the middle of the summer then? What are you doing to make that work? Because are you talking about like salad mix or are you talking about head lettuce?
Both.
Okay.
Yep, both. So we had this one restaurant account that wants, 100 pounds of salad mix every week, all year round. Another wholesale group wanted, like last year, they wanted 425 heads of head lettuce every single week, all summer. And that's good, at $250 to $250 a head. It's not as good as retail, but it's every week. Like that was a nice paycheck that helped with our infrastructure and labor and all that. So what I can do is I'll just kind of walk through kind of the basic steps of what we do in the summer. Number one is germination of lettuce seed. Very hard to do in the summer because of the heat. So we pick heat tolerant varieties. And then we're planting, we're seeding the greenhouse. It goes in a walk-in cooler for 48 hours. It comes out in the afternoon, evening. And that we can almost have just about 85 to 90% germination rate, which is really good because we used to get like 30.
So you're seeding in flats, watering them in, and then putting them in your walk-in cooler.
That's right. And yes, it does sound excessive amount of work, but when that is literally we sell, it's probably 60 to 70% of our income is lettuce. So when that is the bulk of your income, you'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. Then that goes in a greenhouse, a shaded greenhouse for about 2-3 weeks. And then the last 5 days, we put them outside to kind of get hardened off to the heat, so to speak. I know it's common to do that in the early spring, but believe it or not, there's a better survival if you can put those transplants in the sun, because you're fixing to put them out in the field where it's relentless. And so having that 3 to 4 day period, that really helps kind of gets them immune and ready for the heat. And then we use drip tape and overhead both. So what we're doing is we're turning on the drip tape. We're getting the beds completely soaked. The lettuce just goes right in there. And mind you, down here, come 8-9 o'clock, it's pushing 90 degrees already. And the sun is just, it's just blasting. So it's important that it gets water as soon as possible. And so by planting in a wet bed really helps for the water. And then as soon as we're done, we have overhead irrigation, which we have on a timer, 3 cycles a day at 15 minutes per cycle. And one of those we tried to aim for early in the night, which helps cool off the plant and the beds. I feel like it's important for lettuce. It needs to cool down for 3 or 4 hours at least without the sun to really help kind of recover from the heat stress. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I'm just telling you from experience what seems to really work for us. When we started doing that, 3 cycles a day and then, doing one in the evening just to kind of cool off the lettuce and the ground, we really had much, much better success with the lettuce not going bitter.
And are you doing that throughout the growth cycle, or is that just what you're doing when you're establishing the plants?
The growth cycle. So we'll actually probably start that. It's been hot here, but not like the crazy 90 degrees at 10 o'clock in the morning hot. So we'll start here in the next week or two. We'll actually start that rotation of water till the end of August. And another thing that we have found too is that lettuce, if you can get lettuce, if it can survive the first 7 to 10 days of its growing life, then half the battle is won. So what we've also started to do for the first 2 weeks after we plant is we'll put shade cloth, like a 50% shade cloth over it. And that just helps that with the water and all the things that I mentioned. It just helps really get it off to a good start. And then for the last week and a half, 2 weeks of its time, because in the summer, in 4 weeks, a transplant will actually yield a whole head of lettuce ready to sell. Then we'll take off the shade cloth because I feel like the lettuce under the shade cloth for the whole life tends to not be as dense, like it's stretching to get more light. And so what we found is as long as you keep the water to it and you're doing heat varieties and all those things are happening, it does just fine. Last summer was a nasty summer. And again, I'll give you a perspective. Like last September, we tracked it. There was not one single day in the month of September that was under 90 degrees.
You're kidding me.
It was insane. Like normally, by the second week of September, we're in the 70s, and then it climbs on down to the 60s. It was insane. It was just really, really bad. And, it works for us. I'm not saying that this is going to work for everyone else. Everyone else's context is different. Your soil type. But that really worked for us really, really well on the farm. And that, that's huge. We were doing Salanova, which is not as big of a yielder as the other seasons. But, when you have a high paying customer, it's worth the effort. We're actually, we just started last week. We're going to actually start doing salad mix. We've got a certain mixture of salad mix we're going to actually do in paper pots. Because what we found when you plant greens like arugula and baby mustard and those things in the paper pot, this is like on the 2-inch cell, really heavy, 6 to 7 rows per bed of the paper pot. It's ready to harvest from the time you from the time you transplant till the time you harvest. It's like a 2-week window, so it's really quick, and so you can do a lot of rapid turnovers, and it's not in the field as long. So we just have a much better germination rate, and also it's not as bitter and tough because it's hadn't been out in the field as long. So we've been really excited about implementing that, and so that's really worked for us on greens this early summer, and we're fixing to scale up really heavy for our salad mix.
When you're doing that with those paper pot transplants and you're putting in, they're growing for a couple weeks out in the field and you're pulling them back out again, are you pulling the paper out as well before you put in the next succession?
We're going to start doing that. Mm-hmm. We were lightly, using the power harrow, and then we would just rake it all up. But now, mind you, whenever we seed in the paper pots, we're seeding that in the greenhouse.
Right. You're seeding indoors and then doing the paper pot or the paper chain transplanters outdoors, right?
That's right. Yep. And so for greens, mind you, and if you're in a cooler climate and you can germinate those green seeds fine, then it's not worth the trouble for sure. It's just only in our context because we have such a demand for greens that we're willing to take the cost of the paper pot and the greenhouse space for very consistent and reliable, stands of greens.
Well, and of course, with the kinds of weed control challenges that you guys have as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, being able to have a crop in the ground for 2 weeks instead of 4, that actually makes a big difference.
Huge. It's huge. It's, these are the small things that, implied on a very small farm can really make a huge difference in the efficiency on how much time you're out there, pulling out weeds. And yeah, it's for us, it's really, this is the practical things like these small changes that really, so, since, instead of competing with squash, with the other farmers who are just almost giving them away, why don't we put a little bit of extra thought, streamline our systems, really start analyzing and criticizing how we're doing things and trying to grow things in a way that really just make, financial sense.
And I think growing those things that the other people aren't growing is such an important idea, right? I mean, you show up at market and instead of looking at what's there, you look at what's not there.
Right. Mind you, I'm sure, the time, competition is coming, which I'm a big fan of competition. It keeps us on our toes. But if you're in a new, you're in an area that has no one who's doing greens, that's a huge opportunity, just huge. And I mean, everybody is eating salads right now. Everybody loves a salad.
So how many people do you have working on the farm with you, Ray?
So this year we, after last year was just mainly my wife and I, and we, actually just mainly me. And we had some other part-time like high school help, which were great folks, but we saw the need for reliable, really driven labor. People who really care. Not that they didn't care, but there is a difference between a 28-year-old and a 16-year-old, believe it or not. So this year, because last year, like we could have done way better on our sales if we would have had someone who could have really done the plantings, the bed prep. I'm delivering our product to Memphis. It's 2 hours away, so I'm doing a lot more delivering than I would like to be. Right. I'm hoping to once we get a few more stuff established, I'm hoping that we can hire a driver, which is definitely in the works. We came to realize that paying someone even $15 an hour to do some of these succession plantings would have made us a lot of money. So it was a hard step. So this year we actually got a full-time helper. He's works 40 hours, and then I have another guy who works 30 hours. And then Ben, who's our full-time help, his wife actually comes and helps my wife this year do the actual pack shed, because we're getting into a lot of grocery stores now, which it pays really well, but it is a lot more just packing and labeling and all that stuff. So she comes in on Tuesday and Thursday mornings and help us, wash and pack and get all that stuff out. So, our goal is to be done harvesting and packing by, lunchtime. Yeah. And then that's basically it.
Now, so getting into grocery stores, is that something where you guys have, especially considering that you're talking about salad greens, have you guys needed to go through a gaps audit or anything like that to be able to service that marketplace?
So yes and no. The way we got in the grocery stores was we had a big account that was going to be just huge for us. And management changed like 2 days before our first delivery went out. And it didn't work out like it was planned, which is, it's part of farming. So I started really hustling because I'm sitting on a lot of product, last spring. And so I just happened to go in a small grocery store and saw that they had some local product and it was locally owned. So I talked to the owner and like, yeah, we'd love to have your stuff. So that's where they got started. He didn't need for it to be GAP certified because, the owner worked in the store. It wasn't a chain. But, we've approached folks like Whole Foods. They do want you to be GAP certified and certified organic. Yeah. But I on the grocery store, I feel like that is one market. Like if you're in a market and your farmer's market's flooded, there's no room, you try to go hit up all the grocery stores, but there's already, several farmers dominating that sector. Again, do the thing that no one else is willing to do. And that's pack all your greens in clamshells. Yes, it does take some more labor, but you can still get paid really well and make a good living without having to go set up at the farmers markets and, go from chef to chef and figure out what they want this week and what they want next week. Grocery stores are such a pleasure to deal with. They're easy. They order on time. They're very consistent. They pay on time. So that's something we just picked up another grocery store last week. Pretty excited about, and we are planning on getting GAP and organic certified to really go with for after the big stores, because we're definitely seeing a lot of new competition in other markets. And I don't know if it's just the Mid-South, but the Mid-South farmers market scene is dwindling rapidly. The Memphis farmers market, there's been a few that's closed. I think their attendees aren't half. Even my local farmers market in Jackson, 3 years ago, there was 2,000 people there a day. You could barely walk. And now it's got to be less than half in attendance. And so we've realized the reality is, though, not everybody shops at a farmer's market. It's not convenient. They don't want to give up their Saturday mornings. But every American, whether you're a big, farmer's market fan or not, you're going to go to a grocery store to shop. And those folks who do go to the grocery store and they say, oh, wow, here's a locally grown clamshell of salad mix. Here's, some spinach or whatever greens or herbs. And I'm going to buy them because it looks just as good as the stuff from California. It lasts way longer. And so I feel like there's a huge opportunity for beginning farmers who are really struggling to find their place in the ecosystem, so to speak. Because, it's tough to get into a farmer's market that's had the vendors that's been there for 20 years. If you're not selling a lot, it's not that your product is bad. It's just there's a lot of vendors who've really developed a lot of loyal clientele that aren't just going to switch on a whim.
Right. And I think the other thing with the retail stores, especially, and we sold a lot of product through retail stores on my farm, and I loved it because you could stop off and you can drop off $1,000 worth of product
easy
in 20 minutes.
Easy. Easy.
And so you've really cut down on your marketing costs. So yeah, you're taking a lower price, but the what it takes to actually make that sale is so much less, and the volume is so much more. Now, it does introduce some risk factors because then if you're dealing with one or two big stores, having one of them stop buying your stuff can throw you for a loop. But
absolutely.
But man, it was nice and it was fun. And you know what? I also say there is nothing cooler than walking into a grocery store and seeing your produce on a shelf.
You know how awesome that is? It is such a great feeling. It really is. It really is.
Well, I was used to stand in there and I'm like, I wanted to say to the people that were next to me, I'm like, hey, those are my herbs, right? You see that? I grew that, right? I did that.
Right. That's right. Buy some, yeah, no, it's great. And it's amazing, like how many more people now who go to the farmer's market and like they don't buy salad mix, but they'll go, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm not gonna get any today because I buy your stuff at the grocery store. It's been fascinating to watch over the last few years. And another thing is I really do think, just at least here in the Mid-South, like there's a big push to like change our local like food economy and like get food in places where, talk about all these food deserts. And I just feel like getting your product in a grocery store is such a great way to really make an impact on that local food, economy. So I just think I think it's a great thing for really beginning farmers to just take a look at. It's not for everybody. It does, you got to move quick and fast. You need to be able to do, 3 or 4 clamshells a minute, not, 1. So you definitely have to hustle. But and another thing with the grocery stores, again, this is in my context because of how far I have to drive. If I had 10 big grocery stores, I could essentially hire a driver to drop off a pallet out of each store. Where at a farmer's market, most farmers know how that is. You are the face of that farm. And you can't just hire anybody, or else you could really, really hurt your sales or even your reputation as a vendor at that market.
One of the things that I think is so important when you're going to grocery stores is quality. It's really getting in there with good stuff. Because if I'm selling something at a farmer's market, I'm handing somebody a head of lettuce, they're probably going to use it in the next couple of days.
That's right.
But if I'm taking a clamshell of lettuce to a store, it might not even hit the shelf for 3-4 days, depending on where they are in their stock rotation.
Yes.
So what have you guys made changes in what you're doing from a quality perspective and
yes,
to be able to serve that market better?
Yep. So one thing that we have found is it starts with the harvest. Well, yeah. And so it starts with the harvesting. So we typically like to harvest all of our greens before 8 a.m. And there's something to harvesting greens when they're still cool and there's dew on it that just, once the dew dries and that lettuce gets limp, I'm not sure, like, if you go out into your field at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that head of lettuce or that, Salanova salad mix, it's not going to be happy. Like, it's really, really sad. And so if you, the way I look at it as, when you go to harvest, you can only maintain the condition that it's at. You can't really improve it. So if you're harvesting a sad looking lettuce, you can get it washed and it may look like it's a little perking up, but it's just going to be in a sad state until, it'll just go bad quick. Where if you're harvesting greens when they're happy, and they're crisp and they're fresh, and you keep it that way. So you're taking it from the field right to your walk-in cooler, and it's staying cold, and you're packaging it in a very cooled shed or packing house that's not hot, so it's never getting wilted. We've had folks tell us that our salad mix has lasted 3 weeks. And so It's just taking those steps from the harvest, and keeping it cool. Like we have a walk-in, a trailer that's insulated with spray foam. We have a cool bot in there, so we can keep that lettuce cool literally from, when the time it leaves the farm to the time it goes into the grocery stores. And I think that helps a lot. And you're right. And it's very important because, just because it's local, it also it needs to be better than what California has to offer, or no one's just going to buy it just because you're local. So I think keeping it fresh, keeping your varieties and making sure it's not bitter, watching out for bugs, and just all the basic, just quality. Paying attention to all those nuances really make an impact. One of our grocery stores last year said that our salad mix was one of the top 10 selling items in their store. And they were really ecstatic about that, because sometimes you just wonder, like, how long is the grocery store going to keep working with a small farm, who, sometimes like, oops, we didn't have arugula this week because it got too bitter or the germination didn't happen. We haven't quite nailed it perfectly all year round. So, you wonder, but the fact that it's a top selling, it lasts for 3 weeks, all those things goes a long ways. And, the proof is in the pudding. So as long as the people are coming to come back and buy more, then, I think there's something there.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just so important, whether you're selling at farmer's market or selling at the grocery store or whether you're picking what crops to grow is to realize that you're not entitled to the business that you want. You've got to find a place where you fit in, and you got to provide a service that people need, because nobody's obligated to buy local food.
Right. Absolutely. No, they're not. Grocery stores were not part of our 2016 plan. It was a result of a big contract falling through and me being very, very hungry and very driven and going, okay, what is the one thing that farmers aren't doing? No one here is doing grocery stores. So baby, here I come, and so that's just kind of the way we've approached that. And I think with being a small farm, you have that flexibility of just changing on a whim. And so now, my wife and I, we're like, you know what? This is really nice. This is really stable. This is really consistent. We would love to just do grocery stores, because it's a lot easier to hire somebody to pack a clamshell than it is to find someone who can really be nuanced enough with a Japanese paper pod transplanter.
That's absolutely right.
Anyway, so that's kind of that's what's worked for us in our context.
With that, Ray, we're going to take a quick break, get another word from another sponsor, and then we're going to come back and do our lightning round.
This lightning round is brought to you by Farmers Web, software for your farm. Farmers Web makes it easy to work with your buyers, saving you time, increasing efficiency, reducing mistakes, and streamlining order management from start to finish. No more lost order slips and invoices. Know which of your buyers have already paid and which have not. Keep your records and download your financial data. Farmers Web helps you manage orders from buyers who place them online, but also those that order by phone or text or email. Save time and reduce errors by keeping all of your orders in one place, automatically generating harvest and pick lists, product catalogs, and packing slips. Farmers Web helps inform your buyers of delivery routes, pickup locations, lead times, order minimums, all while helping you keep track of buyer payment terms, special pricing, and customer information for every one of your buyers. A flat monthly fee and flexible plan types allow you to pause, cancel, or switch plan types from month to month at any time, even during the off-season. FarmersWeb.com.
So, Ray, what's your favorite tool on the farm?
I'm really liking this Japanese paper pod transplanter. I think it's a pretty cool tool. And I don't think we've even started on the potential that it can have on a very small farm, especially when it comes to greens. And just the amount of time that it saves on labor of transplanting, it's pretty cool. So I'll have to say that's definitely right now, that is definitely the most exciting tool that we have so far.
Awesome. And what's your favorite crop to grow?
Lettuce. And I just love it. There's something satisfying on, I think the challenges of the crop, working with the varieties of all the seasons and the timing, it's a challenge. And just watching a customer's face, when you hand them a head of lettuce in August, it's a very rewarding crop to grow.
Nice. And if you could go back in time and tell your beginning farmer self one thing, what would it be?
It would be to not have let any animals on your farm ever. Just stay away. No. Actually, I think the number one thing is I wish I could have told myself to go work at a working, successful farm for one season. Just one season. There's so much to be said. You know how many nuances of things you just don't think about a packing shed layout. How your greenhouse should be built in a line to your fields, and there's just so many things to see. And even just a normal farm, like maybe not a really crazy productive farm, but just even seeing the things that do not work. would have been really helpful just to say, you know what? I think there's a lot to say by beginning farmers going to another farm and just really observing. So I really would have done that. It's hard to do with a wife and 2 kids, but
yes, it is.
It is what it is, and I'm grateful for our journey, regardless.
All right. With that, Ray, thank you so much for being part of the Farmer to Farmer podcast today.
It was a blast, Chris.
All right. So wrapping things up here, I'll say again that this is episode 126 of the Farmer to Farmer podcast, and that you can find the notes for this show at farmertofarmerpodcast.com by looking on the episodes page or just searching for Tyler. That's Tyler. The transcript for this episode is brought to you by Earth Tools, offering the most complete selection of walk-behind farming equipment and high-quality garden tools in North America, and by Rock Dust Local, the first company in North America specializing in local sourcing and delivery of the best rock dust and biochar for organic farming. Additional funding for transcripts is provided by North Central SARE, providing grants and education to advance innovations in sustainable agriculture. You can get the show notes for every Farmer to Farmer podcast in your inbox by signing up for my email newsletter at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. Also, please head on over to iTunes, leave us a review if you enjoy the show, or talk to us in the show notes, or tell your friends on Facebook. We're at Purple Pitchfork on Facebook. And hey, when you talk to our sponsors, please let them know how much you appreciate their support of a resource you value. You can support the show directly by going to farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate. I'm working to make the best farming podcast in the world, and you can help. Finally, please let me know who you would like to hear from on the show through the suggestions form at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. Ray Tyler is on the show because people kept asking for him. I'll do my best to get your suggestions on the show. Thank you for listening. Be safe out there and keep the tractor running.